6.
Day 2, week 6. Be about it. So we're going to talk about vibrational contracts and energetic exchanges that happen within a specific relationship or an organization. And so what that means is that you end up in a cycle of a relationship that provokes a certain emotion within you or a pattern, and it's difficult to break out of that cycle. And so analyzing and evaluating, all the work that we've done up until this point makes it possible to realize if you have the proper people around you, and if you're interacting and teaching people how to treat you, and you're treating people, contributing, having a positive feedback loop. That's why it changes. Oftentimes people will get stuck in unhealthy vibrational contracts with people because of their childhood. For example, with my mom, she was an alcoholic when I was a child, and so I've had an extreme difficult time trusting her and feeling safe. And so as a result, our vibrational contract looks like her emotionally dumping on me and confiding in me and basically finding security and stability within me, and then me getting resentful and irritated because she was not there for me, and I was a child. And so every time we interact, it promotes this sense of frustration because she has a habit of calling, trying to make plans, and then not following through, re-establishing the lack of trust and faith and security within our relationship, and then that pushes me back to experience this frustration and loss of hope and distrust within that relationship. And so that happens every time we interact, and so the point of these vibrational contracts is, if you're doing all the work that we've been talking about over the past 5 weeks, is that it's an opportunity to integrate an old pattern or to integrate old wounds that are coming up to be present. And the way you do that is by setting boundaries.
Right. One of the things that I think it's important to point out is that, we humans can be and tend to be, especially when we're young, very fragile and malleable, little balls of energy. And as we get older, we internalize a lot of those things. And, for example, like with your mom, when something bad happens or something reminds you of the past, it brings up that lower vibrational range in you, and it's very hard to communicate positively and in a loving way through that really difficult vibration. And so it creates a negative feedback loop where you want to be the change that you want to see in the world, but if somebody is bringing that out of you, it's very difficult. And so you have to set a boundary with that person to limit them bringing you back, because you've identified what makes you feel a certain way, and that feeling is a lower vibrational feeling, and if you stay in that feeling, it's going to attract more. And so it's this cycle. And so once you're able to identify it, you can step out of it and make difficult decisions like who you deal with, and then kind of level up and say, this is where you're allowed to be in my life.
Yep, absolutely. Kind of limit the exposure that you have to it, because there's some people in our life that we're not willing or able to fully let go of, and those people who you choose to still maintain or hold space for, you can practice this work with.
Or like you mentioned, holding energy, which is actually spending energy right now for something that you don't know if will happen in the future.
And that's a personal boundary that you get to choose if that's something you want to do or not, because we need most of our energy, if not all of our energy, right here to create fully and show up fully for people. There are certain things that we must hold energy for in the future, like my kid's future, for example, but that's the choice, right? We get the choice. And the point of the program is to remind us that we have the freedom to make the choices. All of these choices we are in control of. So another example with an organization is really simple. It's like going to the DMV. When we used to go to the DMV before COVID, before everything was online, people would go there and they would dread it before they even got there, and they would just get extremely impatient and frustrated. And so sure enough, every time they left, they would be in that state of mind and being. And so that's an example of we pass those contracts down generationally, right? So I heard my mom talking about the DMV. I've heard a lot of people talking about the DMV. So sure enough, when I went there, that's what I was expecting.
Your expectation.
Yeah, and so that's a vibrational contract. There are positive vibrational contracts.
Right.
And so Kyle and I we resemble a really positive contract because our feedback loop is of safety and security, where I'm able to express and work through my stuff with him, and he's nurturing on that side, and he is able to do the same thing for me, and we mirror high energy back to each other, so that when we're down in it, we hold the space for the other person to heal, but then when they're ready to come back around, we can do it for the other person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna just change
Go
a little
ahead.
bit,
Yeah.
and that is like when I go out in the world, I enjoy it, but it's because I'm not doing it all the time, I think, and so I take my energy out into the world and spread it around. I don't really have to talk to anybody to do it,
Right.
but if I get people that start to know who I am, I don't really know who they are, and they talk to me, I can kind of feel them absorbing my energy.
Yeah.
And so that's a unequal, unbalanced emotional contract or a vibrational contract.
So contracts are repeated. So it's definitely it's an unbalanced exchange.
Right.
And contracts are the exact same thing, just after repetition. So if you were to go back to the same area or the
Right.
same place and recognize a pattern with it being unbalanced regularly, then that would definitely become a contract. And so the momentum builds the contracts, is what it is, and it just kind of solidifies it, makes it a little bit stronger, makes that momentum stronger. So the other thing I wanted to say is that another example of vibrational contracts is noticing the story people tell themselves or the story that you interact with. And so you'll probably have an example of this, but if I were to recognize that someone is always being in the victim state every time I talk with them, or they're just emotionally dumping on me and they're not asking me, and it's just unbalanced, it's a representation of, for me, do I want to be in that type of contract where every time I'm interacting with them, they're just, emotionally dumping on me?
Yeah. I think a good example is somebody who's, for me, it would be probably my mom. Somebody who sits in judgment and thinks they know better of what's best for everyone. And so, we will go and we'll talk to her, and she'll tell us that whatever we're doing, she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't do that. She wouldn't go there. She probably not. Probably the people are probably bad there. And instead of saying, "Wow, I don't know if that's for me, but good luck," it's just a different vibration where everybody's different, and everybody, So if I go into that knowing that, without the understanding and expectation of being experienced that way or being talked to that way, I would probably be like, "Whoa, I don't have any reason for that, any space for that in my life." And so I think that's a good example. Whereas if I go out in the world and somebody tells me that, and I'm like, "Oh man, let me know how I can help." It's just two different ways to address the same exact set of circumstances or facts or conversation.
Yeah, so it has a lot to do with like their outlook.
Right.
And so the last one is an emotional trigger. If you go around a certain situation or people or environment, I guess, or location, and you, from multiple things, you get this emotional trigger. Not only is it an invitation to look at what it's triggering, what belief, what experience has not been mended or healed or forgiven or integrated into this reality, but it's your boundary that you get to set if you want to continue going to that location, right? Or that place. And so what I will say, just to kind of wrap this up and bring it full circle, is that it's our choice to constantly be in emotional vibrational contracts. And the reason why it's difficult to set boundaries with loved ones or relationships that you've had long term is because of this momentum that's built. These contracts are very strong. It's easy for me to set new boundaries with new people in my life. More difficult to find the words and the courage and the strength to set boundaries with my mom. right? Because it's a repeated thing. And so my choice, what I do is that I create space, you know, until I can figure out how to set a very strong, hard boundary. At this point, it's a hard boundary. You know, I just need to give myself space and time to heal and to look at objectively, because, you know, when we're in abusive situations, and that's what vibrational contracts can be, like abusive relationships, we start to get clouded with the chemical overload of, you know, depression, anxiety, the feelings of the negative vibration, the lower vibrational feelings. And it doesn't allow us to really think well, because we're in this fight or flight mentality, right? We're just trying to survive at that point. And so there's science behind how well we think and how you know, our prosperity is based on the chemicals that we're flooding with, which is why our relationship is a great example of having a healthy vibrational contract, because I feel very safe and I feel secure and I want to play, you know, like those are the opposite emotional feelings. So
yeah, I think the last thing that I would bring up in this is the need and importance of balance in your life and in your relationships, and for yourself, you know, being aware of and in touch with, you know, your spiritual side, your, you know, how you treat yourself, and, you know, finding balance with at least those three parts, you know, your romantic relationship, your personal relationships, and yourself. And how our brain works is, you know, if we do any one thing too much, we'll stop getting the reward from it. And so we find balance so that we can not just be, you know, healthy outwardly, but so that we can keep getting the same thing and not build a tolerance to any one thing.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So that wraps it up for this day, and then we will see you tomorrow. Thank you.